again, and welcome to War Stories, behind the scenes tales from the front lines of the media. I am your host, Tom Curley. Welcome to the show. For those of you that are just tuning in, I used to be in broadcasting many years for the CBS television network. I worked in news. I was a director and an audio guy. And we get together with old friends and we tell war stories, crazy things that happen behind the camera and in front of the camera. And of course, I can't do it without my co-partner in crime, Mr. Garry Armstrong. Garry, how the hell are you today? How you feeling? What's new? Blah, 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 blah.
Feeling pretty good. We're looking out the window at the early days of August. I can't imagine how quickly the year has gone by. And I note that the weather folks are saying this is the hottest July we've had on record, and they can't understand why. Duh.
I love, yeah,
We are binging again for the umpteenth time, for obvious reasons, the West Wing. And each time we re-binge it, it just seems fresher than ever. And the most recent episode I think we watched last night had part of the plot, a lot of the plot had to do with climate change. And this is going back, what, 30 years? So it just
yeah,
goes
wow,
around and around and around, and it's still
around and
breaking
around and
news.
around. Yep, it's nothing. I mean, nothing changes. I mean, I look at a documentary about, oh, I don't know, the 60s, and I'm going like, nothing's changed. It's all
No,
we're bringing out the same idiotic protest signs that we did
yep,
from the 60s. We're all of a sudden we're
yep.
worried about gay marriage and black people and abortion and the only thing we don't have a war to protest, and I'm sure
Well,
somebody's working
don't
on that one
bite your
too.
lip.
So I still have to tell you I've just finished editing the show that will air this week,
Uh-huh.
although this show will not air until next week. But it's the one where you talked about the practical joke that you did on another news reporter, where you fed him phony information that a robbery suspect was Jody Garrett, Joe Cody Jarrett,
James Cagney,
and
yeah.
James Cagney and Edward Robinson as Johnny Rocco. Oh my God, was that
Right.
funny? I'm still laughing
I
at it.
mean,
But
you don't even have to be a movie buff. Most people know that. I mean,
yeah,
I if I had really wanted to be obvious, I could have said, the guy who said top of the world, Mar.
Rated by Top of the World!
But I didn't want to be that much over the board. And for folks who don't know what we're talking about, and this really happens, and this is why I had to do it. It doesn't matter whether it's a small local market or network TV. There are some reporters who are so unsure of themselves that they go over the line and they listen to what other reporters are saying, and then they repeat the same stories. And for some reason, they assume no one will know. Well, the fellow we were talking about had become notorious for it. It was almost like some bad cartoon. He would hide behind bushes, and he would be poking his ear out to hear what you were saying, and he would write down what you were saying, and then he would run quickly and say the same thing on his camera. That seems so dopey, but that's what happened, and that's why we had to, put that guy in his place. Johnny Rocco.
oh, anyway, it was Johnny
Wow.
Rocco. A lot of guys with guns, but there's only one Johnny Rocco.
Thousands of guys got guns, but there's only one Johnny Rocco.
Well, anyway, that
Can
was
you
last week.
can
So,
can
well,
you imagine
well,
Ed Murrow hiding behind a tree and listening to whoever his competition was then?
I guess Huntley and Brinkley. Yeah, or Huntley and Brinkley
Well,
listening to Walter Cronkite. Yeah, it's all too funny. So
wow.
anyway,
It
that was last week. This is this week.
Yeah,
So what are
and
we going to talk about this week?
this week I have the top thing I have to offer. Not saying it's quality, but it really falls into place of what we're talking about the behavior of some on the air people, and this hasn't changed over the years. And I think I think what's happened as it becomes more and more uh, practical to look good on the air and not be really mindful of what you're saying, this story becomes even more and more prudent. One of the first stories I did in Boston for the Boston TV station had to do with the passing of Louis Armstrong. Uh, I was at my desk and the story came across the wires, and the assignment editor called me over and said, "Hey, I want you to go out and do this." And I said, "Oh, that's great. I love the music." And he said, "Okay, go get your stuff. We'll be leaving." And I said, "This is terrific. It's really hurt the family in such a personal way. I hope I can be objective about it." And he said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, my uncle Louis. He was always fun when we got together for family things, and he would play music for us, dating back to when he was a young guy in New Orleans." He said, "Oh, good." And I looked at the fellow with a straight face. Now, the big plus for me was keeping a straight face because people always believed me. And as soon as I said he was my Uncle Louis, I walked away wondering, is this going to get me into trouble? And then I thought, no, it's so obvious that I'm just kidding around. But remember, I was a newcomer there, so they didn't know my personality. We go out to a place. It was called Caesar's Monticello. It was one of the last of the old time nightclubs and restaurants located in Framingham, Mass. We did a nice little, and it looked had all the ambience of clubs out of the 1920s when Louis Armstrong began playing. So I did my piece, the tape piece, talking about Armstrong's place in the music world, yada yada yada, and signed it off. And then they had me back for the 6 o'clock news to do a live wraparound. Well, I heard the anchor's intro and I almost fell off the table. The anchor set it up saying the world is mourning the loss of Louis Armstrong, yada, blah, blah, blah. But we're very fortunate to have live at one of the places that Mr. Armstrong used to play at. We're very fortunate to have one of his family members, his nephew, Garry Armstrong, nephew of the late Louis Armstrong. They take me, and I just barely contained the laughter, didn't laugh. So I told the story. It led into the tape. The tape play came out, and I looked around and I said, "The Chateau de Ville here is where my uncle used to play." And he had such fond memories. And I want to just take a moment and say it's great to have the memories I have of Louis Armstrong. And I signed off. And just as they were about to take it back at the station, I said, "Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah." And the anchor sat back saying, "Oh, that's so wonderful. We brought the story home. And we're so fortunate to have one of the few people in the news business who's related to Louis Armstrong." And I, at that point, I wondered to myself, I wonder how long my career is going to be. I'm
Yeah,
still here.
yeah. I guess none of Louis Armstrong's family were watching, or if they did, maybe they didn't know.
No,
You know,
no.
I I have
We got a lot of people saying that's terrific. Welcome to
that's
Boston.
terrific.
Where will you be performing next? And
Some
where the karma came back was I had to write people back saying no, it was just a joke, but they said we don't mind it being a joke. Where will you be performing next? And I wrote back again saying, "No, you don't understand. It was just a joke. We get it, but Armstrongs have we had they had the vibe of music. Do you play the trombone or
oh,
trumpet?" And I said, "No, I'm a two-finger typist and I sing off key." And I think that finally nailed it. And the mail kept coming in.
oh my
So
God.
it really doesn't matter if you say it
Oh,
on television. It's got to be
it's true.
gospel.
It's true. Well, I have
It's
a
true.
I have a similar thing. Many years ago, um, when I was married to my future ex-wife, my first wife, the
Right.
whole concept of political correctness came about. It suddenly became a thing.
Uh-huh.
All right. And it was back then, it was a thing of, sort of the far left hippy dippy, politically correct. You're not allowed to say, oh, I don't know,
Right.
Negro. You have to say black person. So
Right.
my ex and I one day, just joking amongst ourselves, came up with a series of politically correct terms. All right. Now the first one was it's politically incorrect to call somebody fat. I mean, it's mean. So you don't say fat, you say horizontally challenged. Okay. It's not nice to call people short people because that's they're vertically challenged. All right. It's
Yep.
very politically incorrect to call somebody a homeless person or a bum. They are either the differently housed or the residentially challenged. Yeah, but the big one was women. All right. There was a time where there was a faction that women should not be called women because it has the word men in it. They shouldn't be called
Right.
women because it has the word man in it. So we came up with the correct term is vagino American. Okay, so and a dog, you can't say a dog, because there's so many negative connotations. Sick as a dog, beat him like a dog. So the correct was canine American. So anyway,
Okay.
was telling this at I was telling this at work one day. Just in the control room shooting the shit or out on the floor shooting the shit. And one of the cameramen came to me later and he said, "Oh, Tom, um, I was in the studio. We were doing the morning news, and uh, one of our anchors or contributors was a doctor, Dr. Bob Arnott, a nice guy,
Hmm.
and he was the medical TB doctor. And so he said, while they were getting set up, for some reason, the subject of political correctness came up, and he said, and I told Bob, oh, your bit, and he was like, he didn't get that it was a joke. He was writing it all
Right.
down, going, "Oh my God, this is very interesting. I didn't know that, and I think we should bring this up on the air." And the cameraman went,
Oh,
"No, no, 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 Bob,
geez.
it's a joke. It's a joke. It's not real." And I went to him. I went, "What the hell is wrong with you? Why did you say that? We could have had a guy on network television tell the world that the politically correct term for women is vagino Americans." But it didn't happen because he
He's
told them that it was a joke. Isn't that amazing? That
somebody.
amazing.
Somebody back talking about this. Someone said before the cameras rolled, I I don't know how do I describe you. I kind of knew where this was going. He said, "Do I call you a Negro? Do I call you an African American?" And I just stared at him. He said, "Have I offended you?" I said, "No, you haven't gotten it right yet." "Well, what did I call you?" "Oh, my name's Garry." But no, that's not what I was getting at. He said, "Well, do you want me to call you a black man?" I said, "No, my skin's brown." He said, "Do you want me to call you Brownie?" I said, "Now that's offensive. Don't you dare call me that." "Well, what do you want me to call you?" I said, "Why don't we just do the interview? Whatever comes to mind." So we started rolling,
Oh God.
and he said, "It's great to welcome one of the new reporters into Boston." He said, "Garry, I forgot, what should I call you?" I said, "Just call me Mr. Armstrong." And he said, "Well, that's kind of awkward." "Well, I could call you the white senator, but that would be offensive, is it not?" And he said, "But I'm Polish." And I said, "Will you like me to call you a Polish white American?" And he said, I don't know. What are we talking about?" And I said, "We're not talking about anything right now, but I think it's getting into offensive territory. Would you like me to call you a Polak?" And he said, "No, no, 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 that's not good." I said, "Well, we can all agree that we're all one, of one person, one spirit. Would you like to sing Kumbaya?" And he said, "What's that?" I said, "No, no, no. Listen, I'm going to lay this out for you and make it really easy. You can't call me a Negro. You can't call me an African American. Now, I have family roots in the West Indies. And he said, Oh, do you know Harry Belafonte? I said, Why would you say that? And he said, Well, you're from the West Indies. Do you think we all look like Harry Belafonte? And the camera's rolling and going in for a close up, and the cameraman is laughing. And this poor guy is just caught betwixt and between. And he said, I'm sorry. I know we're rolling. And is this live? And I said, Oh, you bet your boobies they are. And he just said, Well, let's stop right here. And I said, Well, that's very white of you. And he just gave the cut sign and ended it there. And that was the end of that darn interview. So these things about uh, color of skin or how tall you are or how short you are, how do you describe a woman who is, shall we say, amply endowed? We can't say she's big breasted because that, that's
Mm,
a sexist remark. How do you get around those things?
mm.
You can just stare.
Yeah, or what if she's, had a boob job? She's she's mammarially augmented. I mean, I I don't know. Oh, that is
There
too
is
much.
no.
So I have a story. I promised last week that I would tell this, and what's amazing is that I remembered it. We were talking about times in our lives where a show gets created because the guy at the top wanted it, and when that happens, a show just gets created like that. I was talking
Yeah.
about CBS Market Watch Weekend, but before that, it was an even better example. Um, in All right, I'll start. Okay, when I first went to work at CBS um, as an audio guy, one of the first things they did, oh, there you go, the first 50 years. Oh, right, by Jeff Greenfield. I worked with that
Right,
guy.
right.
He used to be on.
I,
He used to be on the
this
morning
is
news
fascinating
all the
about.
time.
You know what I don't understand? Why I don't see you in here. It talks about a
Yeah,
lot of people who
yeah,
work there but I don't see Tom Curley there. So I would call
yeah.
the lawyer
Well,
right
that's
away. Now
because I
continue,
I came I
continue.
came a little I came a little later. But anyway, one of the first jobs they gave you as an audio guy was a thing called LAN, Late Afternoon News Feed. And what it was is between the hours of 4 o'clock, 4 p.m., and 5 p.m., the network was dark. All right. There was no network programming. So, what they would do in that
Right,
hour and a couple of other hours is we would go to an empty control room, usually the oldest, worst, maintained control room, and we would have a technical director, an audio guy, and an AD and a tape guy downstairs, and we would play news footage for the affiliates. Up next, here is a car chase in Los Angeles, and we would roll the tape. Here is a bank robbery. Here is picture of a flood. Whatever the news of the day was, we as the news
right,
network, our responsibility to our affiliates was to provide them with programming. And we did that every day. And then one day, they decided it cost too much to rent the studios, and they gave it to some guys with three tape machines up on the third or fourth floor, and we never heard from them again. And the union bitched
hmm,
about it, but there really wasn't much they could do. So now you fast forward to the 1991, 92. I get called by my boss and he says, we're going to do a new overnight news show called Up to the Minute. And we're going to do it up on the fourth floor where Newspath is. And my first thing is, what the hell is Newspath? I never even heard it. Well, it turns out when I went up to the fourth floor, over all those years, which is about a good 10, 15, maybe 20 years, that little group had grown into Newspath. It was a whole room of people and writers and editors and all sorts of things that they provided the news feeds for
Ah, I see you have the machine that goes bing!
the affiliates. And what had happened was the overnight news show used to be Charlie Rose. It was a show called Night Watch. And
right.
they decided that it was too expensive to do it anymore. So the vice president of NewsPath, the guy who ran NewsPath, apparently was at some meeting with a bunch of executives, including the president of News, and they said, I could do an overnight news show for $600,000 for some ridiculous fee. And they went, oh, great, do it. Well, now they had to do it. So it became a pet project of the then president of News, whose name I will try to remember. And this thing became a priority, all right? So all of a sudden, and one of the reasons it was a priority was that they were going to do something radical. They were going to cut the staff, the control room staff, from 18 people, or, where you had an audio guy, a video guy, a technical director, a Chiron operator, cameramen, okay, at least 3 cameramen, and reduce that down to 3 people. 3 people.
Oh,
and they were going to build they were going to build a special control room that could be run by 3 people. Actually 2. The director also was the cameraman. He also was the Chiron operator. He was also the director. He was also the TD. The audio guy ran the beta cart, ran the tapes, made sure that everything was okay. So I was brought on for 2 reasons. One, I was a computer geek back then, and this studio, this control room that they were building, was going to be run by PCs. And now the PCs were just coming around in 1992. They were 286s, they were primitive, all right? But PCs were going to run our whole control room, okay? And the strength of this concept was that everything was being run by 5 or 6 PCs. And the weakness of this plan was that everything is being run by 5 or 6 PCs. So they brought me up to this news path, and I sat down with 3 people. One guy I knew, my boss, was a vice president, and the other 2 people, I'd never seen him before. And I said, all right, so what is it you want me to do? And they said, well, we're going to make you hyphenate, and you're going to be a director, but you're also going to be the audio guy, and you're also going to be a switcher, and we want you to make sure that all the equipment works. I went, okay. And I said, when are you going to do this? They said, we want to start in a month. And I busted out laughing because they hadn't even built a set. I said, well, where's the set? Oh, we're going to build it here in the newsroom. Yeah. And we're going to do this in a month? And I just busted out laughing. I wasn't being mean. Well, I found out later when I got called into the big boss's office, they said, oh, by the way, you got the job. And I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. He said, because you laughed. You laughed in the vice president of NewsPath's face. Nobody's ever done that before. And everybody was so impressed that you just like, what, are you guys out of your friggin' minds? You can't do this. Well, so, okay, fine. So we started with a room, all right? We started with a room that was basically the size of a large bathroom. I mean, it was maybe a 10-foot by 10-foot room. And in it, we were going to build our control room. And every piece of equipment was used. It was from a studio that had been decommissioned 20 years before. So we had a switcher, a Grass Valley switcher. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, do you know the scene in Star Wars when the guy activates the Death Star?
Commence primary ignition.
That is actually a Grass Valley video switcher, okay? It's what you use to put TV on. Normally you would fade from this camera to this camera. But in this case, it activated the Death Star. All right, so now when we dissolve that. Okay. So for a month, I was given an assignment to just hang out and just see what was going on. which is a great assignment. So I would go down and I would watch the engineers who were building this control room. And what they were building was a feed room, a room where you could feed out news videos, all right, which is what NewsPath did. But then I would go to meetings with the executive producer and the senior producer and the anchors, and these guys were planning on doing a full-blown network news show, just like the evening news, the morning news, with all the bells and whistles of a regular control room. And not only was it going to be a news show, it was going to be the only news show that was on from 2 in the morning until 8 in the morning, counting all the reruns when you go to the West Coast. We were the only show at 5 o'clock in the morning. We would go live from 2 in the morning till 3:30, and then we would play the tape back for another 90 minutes. But at 5 o'clock, we would go live across the board, all 4 time zones. We were the only news show ever that was live across the entire United States at the same time. So so I'm realizing there's no way we're going to be able to do what the staff wants to do with what was being built. And finally, the engineer, who was a good friend, he finally said, look, this is what we're told to build, and this is what we got to build. Now, when it's over, you can put in as many individual requests to have everything changed as you want. And that's exactly what happened. They built this studio, and I completely rewired it. The first thing we had to do was go out and buy an audio console because they didn't have one. I don't know. They had one, but it was part of the Grass Valley switcher. It was just totally useless. But but this had become a thing. We were the flavor of the month. We were the it people. We were the talk of the building. All right. This was the place to be. So it all culminates on our first show. All right. And I think I told you this before. And if I did, I apologize. My day started at 12 noon. All right. And it ended at 5 o'clock the next morning. It started at 12 noon because our first guest was Bill Clinton. The Bill Clinton who literally the week before had announced that he smoked, but he didn't inhale. He was running for president. He was way down in the polls. He was like 6th. There was the whole Jennifer Flowers. He had just gone on 60 Minutes with his wife, Hillary, to tell the world that, whatever affairs he's having is really none of your business. It's between me and my husband. So go F yourself. But anyway, he came in, which is another story I'll tell, amazingly charismatic, totally impressed with the guy. But so now fast forward to 2 in the morning when we're going to go on the air. Now, like I said, this room is the size of a medium-sized bathroom. All the executives had to be there. Now, we had a separate viewing room for the overflow. But the problem is to go to the overflow room would admit that you're not an important enough executive. You're a lesser executive, and we don't have any of those. All right? None of those. So there had to be 20 people crammed into this poor little control room. I mean, I could barely move. And our first show, it was technically a disaster for a lot of reasons. I mean, shortly after the show started, there was a set. It was actually from an old CBS News evening news set that they had thrown away, and then we put it up, and it was one of those maps of the world. Well, I don't remember whether it was Europe or North America. It fell off the wall live and came crashing to the ground. So that was fun. We got on the air, and when we got off the air. But the thing was, everybody was thrilled. It didn't matter. I'm
Yes.
appalled. Oh my God, we made this mistake. Oh my God, we made this mistake. Normally I'd be filling out trouble reports, but no, we're getting pat on the back. Great show, great show. President of Newt, great show. Everybody. Oh, this is phenomenal. And our main director, a guy named Chip, um, who had been basically the center of attention for a month. They were taking him out to dinner. Oh, he was attending luncheons. He was just having a great time, and he was just beaming. And we all were, the three of us, Ray and me, the three of us. We were just thrilled. And then as everybody walked away, I turned to Chip and he said, "Isn't this great? This is like opening night." And I said, "Yes, it is like opening night. And you do realize that now for the rest of our lives, we're going to have to do this 5 days a week at 2 a.m. when nobody else is around, and we're going to have to do this forever." And you could see he just went, "Oh, I never thought of that." And of course, that's exactly what happened. Now, I'm proud to say that show was on the air for 25 years. And
Yes,
it was
and
a
let
great
me
show.
jump in for a moment, because you had fans. You had fans at least at the affiliates, because for a number of years I was working what they call the dawn patrol shift, which is early in the morning, and preparations for the local early morning shows. And you were on a number of monitors in the newsroom where I worked. So, and we marveled at what you were doing, not knowing what was happening behind the scenes. So, despite what you were saying, you looked good. You looked really good,
Oh
and we
yeah.
were
Oh no,
cribbing
we
notes
we, we
from
pulled
all
it.
the stuff
Yeah.
you were putting out, and we appreciated that.
Oh yeah. We always see.
So,
I always looked at it as an experiment that failed, but we got it on the
okay,
air, so consequently, it was a success. Now I will tell stories in the future more about Up to the Minute because, but we were pioneering such technology that we weren't beta testing, we were alpha testing, and crazy things happened you wouldn't believe. I mean, there was on a
right,
daily basis, a producer would be out typing a script and he might hit a function key on his keyboard. He hit F3 for something. Well, we didn't know that, but when he hit that key, we had this thing called a beta cart that had all of our tapes that we used to play. And all the tapes would just kick out of the machines and eject themselves while we were on the air. And it happened so often that we
I
that,
love it.
that we just got used to it. We just got used to, we had a fix for everything. So anyway, that was that. We do have more to get to, but we're not going to get to it because boy, are we over. We've done it again. Time for the plugs. Serendipity Seeking
Okay.
Intelligent Life on Earth, a blog. Your wife Marilyn writes, we all contributed to it. Voice Apes Audio Theater for the best in audio, radio, and drama. A half-hour radio show, the cult hit from the 80s, is still back. And of course, my sister podcast, Get Off My Lawn with Tom Curley, where we talk about whatever is in the teleprompter. Well, Gary, I guess there is nothing else to say but toodles.